Hi, this is Alizadeh, writer, scholar, reader, and a friend of the paperback book shop. And I'm delighted to be recording another one of these clips for the bookshop's YouTube channel. Last time when I did one of these, I talked about one of the great classics of American horror fiction from the 1950s, I Am Legend. And today I want to talk to you about another really wonderful novel associated with American horror, also from the 1950s, and this is a genuine classic which I'm pretty sure a lot of you know of. Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of the Hill House. It's considered to be horror. It is perhaps the most influential haunted house novel in the English language of the 20th century. But of course, Jackson herself is a kind of an ambiguous writer when it comes to us identifying what kind of writer she was. And she's been recognized as a literary writer because of her incredibly original and sophisticated style and complex characterizations. But a novel like The Haunting of the Hill House is clearly also a haunted house novel. And there have been tons of them in the history of modern Anglophone literature, of course. What Jackson does differently, what makes this a really seminal text of the genre, and why I think you should all read it, is that she, instead of taking this big old mansion and giving it a sense of mystery and eeriness and having the protagonist who wanders about and then usually falls in love with the lord of the manor, she makes the house a place of absolute terror, and she does it using words on a page. Now, this kind of stuff is not so difficult to do if you're making a film. You know, if you've probably seen all those Paranormal Activities. Well, I hope you have seen the Paranormal Activities movies. They're really great and scary. That can be done fairly easily using a camera and sound effects. How do you do it using words on a page? Well, Jackson really sets the standard of how to directly affect the senses of your reader and scare the hell out of them. And, you know, I think a lot of fans of this book think about where they were when they first read it. It has such an impact on them. So I hope you enjoy reading, and I hope you will go and read it. It's an excellent book to read at this time, especially if you're stuck in a house and you're getting bored. Well, what better way to beat boredom than to think your house is haunted? And this book will really make you believe that your house might be haunted. And yes, there have been tons of film adaptations. There's apparently a Netflix series that is loosely based on this book. I don't know if it's any good, but I know the book is very good. And you know, you can Google Shirley Jackson. There's tons of stuff about her, especially her infamous short story, The Lottery, which got her into a lot of trouble with, you know, middle class, urban, bourgeois, progressive readers who hated her guts, and they kept sending hate letters to her until the end of her life because of her story, The Lottery, which really upset those poor, you know, sensitive readers. And this book also really does get under the skin of the readers. I hope it will. Very briefly, this is the story of a house which is supposedly haunted. A team of psychic researchers led by an academic called Dr. Montague decide to go and investigate. Okay, that's kind of sounds a bit cliched, but then we meet the characters who are part of this team, and they are really interesting and weird and memorable. And the main character is a young woman called Eleanor, with her own really weird, haunting backstory. She's very sympathetic, but also a little bit pathetic, by which I mean she's kind of clumsy and a bit laughable, a little bit comical, but also has pathos, has a lot of passion and feeling. Another character is another young woman called Theodora. Eleanor is a bit introverted and emotionally and sexually repressed. Theodora is the opposite of all of that. And then there's a young man called Luke, who owns the house but doesn't really know. He wants to find out the market value of the house and is worried that if it's haunted, then he won't be able to get a lot of money for it when he decides to sell it. He's inherited the house. So there's all this stuff happening. At this part of the story, it's become evident to our psychic investigative team that yes, the house might be haunted. And therefore, Eleanor, who's really freaking out, has asked Theodora to come and sleep with her in the same room. And this is what happens one night when the two women are sleeping side by side. Sitting up in the two beds beside each other, Eleanor and Theodora reached out between and held hands tight. The room was brutally cold and thickly dark. From the room next door, the room which until that morning had been Theodora's, came the steady, low sound of a voice babbling. Too low for words to be understood, too steady for disbelief. Holding hands so hard that each of them could feel the other's bones, Eleanor and Theodora listened, and the low, steady sound went on and on, the voice lifting sometimes for an emphasis on a mumbled word, falling sometimes to a breath, going on and on. Then, without warning, there was a little laugh, the small gurgling laugh that broke through the babbling and rose as it laughed, on, up and up the scale, and then broke off suddenly in a little painful gasp, and the voice went on. Theodora's grasp loosened and tightened, and Eleanor, lulled for a minute by the sounds, started and looked across to where Theodora ought to be in the darkness, and then thought, screamingly, "Why is it dark? Why is it dark?" She rolled and clutched Theodora's hand with both of hers, and tried to speak, and could not, and held on, blindly and frozen, trying to stand her mind on its feet, trying to reason again. "We left the light on," she told herself, "so why is it dark?" "Theodora," she tried to whisper, but her mouth could not move. "Theodora," she tried to ask, "why is it dark?" And the voice went on, babbling, low and steady, a little liquid gloating sound. She thought she might be able to distinguish words if she lay perfectly still. If she lay perfectly still and listened and heard the voice going on, never ceasing, and she hung desperately to Theodora's hand and felt an unanswering weight on her own hand. Then the little gurgling laugh came again, and the rising mad sound of it drowned out the voice, and then suddenly absolute silence. Eleanor took a breath, wondering if she could speak now, and then she heard a little soft cry which broke her heart. A little infinitely sad cry, a little sweet moan of wild sadness. "It is a child," she thought with disbelief. "A child is crying somewhere." And then, upon that thought, came the wild shrieking voice she had never heard before, and yet knew she had heard always in her nightmares. "Go away!" it screamed. "Go away! Go away! Don't hurt me!" And after sobbing, "Please don't hurt me. Please let me go home." And then the little sad crying again. "I can't stand it," Eleanor thought concretely. "This is monstrous. This is cruel. They have been hurting a child, and I won't let anyone hurt a child." And the babbling went on, low and steady, on and on and on, the voice rising a little and falling a little, going on and on. Now, Eleanor thought, perceiving that she was lying sideways on the bed in the black darkness, holding with both hands to Theodora's hand, holding so tight she could feel the fine bones of Theodora's fingers. "Now, I will not endure this. They think to scare me. Well, they have. I am scared. But more than that, I am a person. I am human. I am a walking, reasoning, humorous human being, and I will take a lot from this lunatic, filthy house, but I will not go along with hurting a child. No, I will not. I will, by God, get my mouth to open right now, and I will yell, I will yell, I will yell, stop it! She shouted. The lights were on, the way they had left them on, and Theodora was sitting up in bed, startled and disheveled. What? Theodora was saying. What, Nell? What? God, God, Eleanor said, flinging herself out of bed and across the room to stand shuddering in a corner. God, God, whose hand was I holding? Whoa, spooky. Excellent. Hope you enjoy reading this. And I'll see you next time in one of these clips. Bye.